Is Bosnian culture dead in America? Well, let's talk about it and find out. So I think as time passes and more generations come up through the ranks, I think that we're going to be inevitably losing that language aspect of our culture here in America, just because the first generation that's here, they know they're Bosnian, and the second generation knows less, and then the third generation knows even less than that. So unfortunately, I think that's what is going to go first, is the language. I mean, I'm already seeing it now with the youth, teenagers, younger than teenagers. Their Bosnian is unfortunately broken, and it sucks to see, because you want to keep that language aspect of the culture alive as much as possible. It got a little too hot in here, so I had to turn on the car and turn the AC on. So anyways, let's continue. The first generation immigrants that have came here from Bosnia, we do all we can to keep the culture alive, such as the food, the music, the language, of course, and the community life. I was born in Bosnia, even though I didn't grow up there. I still try to keep those values alive in my family and the people that are around me, right? So cousins, friends, anyone that I come across, I try to keep my culture alive and talk about things that I know, that I'm accustomed to. But I unfortunately do know some first generation Bosnians that do adhere to the American values and standards instead of trying to keep their own cultural values alive, which I get it, but I don't know. In my opinion, you gotta keep the culture going, because if you don't keep it going, it's just gonna die out eventually, one day, and we try to keep that going for as long as possible. When it comes to losing the language, especially our Bosnian language, there are certain jokes, idioms that you can't replicate in English. It doesn't make sense when you're trying to tell a joke in Bosnian and you try to translate in English for a Bosnian that doesn't really understand the language. It can't come off the same way. Those subtle remarks or subtle references that you make in a joke, it cannot be replicated at all. So that's another thing that sucks when it comes to losing the language, is the jokes, certain words, certain idioms. But yeah. So let's talk about food, my favorite topic, and I'm sure it's a lot of other people's favorite topic to talk about. So food tends to survive the longest. It survives longer than language. Why does food last the longest? Well, because it's easy to pass down. Although food is easy to pass down, a lot of Bosnians that live in America don't know all of the dishes. They only know a few, which can be problematic, because as the generations keep going and going, that will eventually fade out too. So it's important to also get the dishes down, pass that down to the next generations, and have them cook up some buda, cook up some sinica, grah, rija and meso, which is one of my favorites, rice and chicken. Can never go wrong with that. Or maybe some people will call it rice, rija and piletina, rice and chicken. So yeah, food is very important to withstand and have as a long-lasting tradition, because food unites people, food brings people together, and we need food to survive, essentially. How about cultural events and gatherings? My family and my wife's family, we try to get together at least once a month, just to hang out, talk about what's been going on in our lives, and really just keep that a tradition alive, like how we do back in Bosnia. We always go to someone's house, and someone would come to our house, and we just try to keep that going. Essentially, it's really just for the social aspect of human life, but we really try to emphasize that in our culture, because that is one of the things that we did a lot back home, and people still do those things back home. But here it's a little different, because people tend to just stay home and not socialize with anyone else other than texting or video chatting, whatever it may be. But it's definitely important to hang out with your friends, hang out with your family, because you don't want to lose that connection with them. After that, it becomes harder to sustain any connections in the future with people. Also, and this is no knock to any people that have DJs at their weddings, but lately I've been seeing a lot of DJs at weddings rather than live bands. I know it's weddings are expensive in general in America, but trying to have like a live DJ or live a band at a wedding, I think makes more sense, just because of, again, the cultural aspect of Bosnians here in America. And again, it's no knock, DJs are cool and all, but that's one thing that I've noticed here, that is changing from live bands to DJs. So back in the early 2000s in America, Bosnian clubs were a big thing. So like Bosnian restaurants, Bosnian bars, those were a big gathering place for a lot of Bosnians to come and hang out, socialize, and just have a good time for themselves. But since then, I have been seeing a lot of Bosnian bars, Bosnian restaurants close down, which is very unfortunate. It makes me very sad. But it is what it is. Time goes on, and what can you do when people don't really want to put in the effort to sustain those kinds of businesses and ventures? So what do people do? They close it down because maybe there's no business, or people just aren't going out as much as they used to. People aren't drinking, people aren't smoking as much as they used to, which I think is a fact here in America, at least. The drinking rates are down, smoking rates are down, which is great. But that causes, like I said, these businesses to shut down, unfortunately, and then there's no connection with other people, and there's no, hey, let's go out Saturday night, let's go out Friday night to this Bosnian bar and just kick it and just talk about whatever it is. Those are things of the past now, which is, again, it sucks, but what can you do? Let's talk about old country mentalities. This one is really rare. I rarely ever see it nowadays in America in 2025. But what about when Bosnians bring over divisions they had back home in Bosnia, like, for example, by religion, politics? I think that can weaken the unity of people here in Bosnia. For example, so a guy from Sarajevo and a guy from Mostar, they might live 10 minutes away from each other in America, but they never speak to each other because of prejudices. I don't know how common this is in America. Maybe some of you can let me know if you guys ever see this in your area where you live in America, because I honestly rarely ever see this. So the US is known for blending cultures, but if you blend it too much, it could lead to erasing the culture for good in America. For example, Italians and Irish people have already lost their language here in America. I never hear any Italian speaking Italian or any Irish speaking their native language, their native tongue. So it really goes to show that it is important to pass down the language to your kids. Try to intentionally speak Bosnian to your kids, even though if your Bosnian is broken, still give that effort to try to speak to your kids, and give that effort for yourself to try to learn more Bosnian, read more Bosnian books, watch more videos, watch more Bosnian videos on YouTube. Try to do everything in your power you can to keep that alive. When it comes to food, try to make more, Bosnian dishes, even though we have a lot of food that's on the fatty side of things, but maybe incorporate some healthy alternatives while still making it a Bosnian dish. I know it's possible because we have done it, and it is possible. So yeah, it's super important to keep our traditions, our culture, our community life alive here in America, because if we don't, we are going to lose it. And I am one that does not want to lose those values, that culture, and that connection we have with other Bosnian people here in America. So yeah, it's really important to chat with one another. Make sure you try to intentionally invite people over to have gatherings for that social connection. Bring out food for social gatherings. Bring out the Bosnian food for social gatherings, right? Bring out that burek, bring out that sina pita, bring out that pomfrit. We can make homemade pomfrit, fries, that is, right? So keep it alive, don't let it go, and make sure you pass down your values, your ethics, and most importantly, in my opinion, the language. Pass the language down to your kids and to other people alike. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me a lot, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. As always, I will see you guys next time. Peace.